OneLitPodcast may contain adult language and sensitive subject matter. Please take care while listening.
Hey everyone, I'm Olivia.
Andria.
And I'm Hayden.
And welcome to OneLitPodcast.
Woo!
If you're new here, then welcome. We are a group of friends who have come together to read, talk about writing, things going on in the literary world, etc., etc. Basically a book club. We just sit around drinking, having a good time, discussing our book of the month, and we share our own little insights and funny thoughts with y'all. I'm so excited to be hosting our first book of 2025, A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. And yes, I bought his name last week.
It's like, are you sure?
I'm so sorry.
It's not Towles.
I'm so sorry that I pronounced it Towles.
Towles.
It's Towles. I looked up pronunciation guide, so I got that down. If you're wanting to join our book club and read along with us, we're reading all of book 1 for this week. Or if you just don't want to read, you don't have the time, or if you're worried a book might not actually be worth your time to read, then we got you, because we give a general gist of what happens in the book each week. So you can go to that one group of coworkers that read all the time, and you feel like you don't fit in because they're always talking about books, but you just can't get into books, and they look at you like trash, like, oh, you don't read books like ever? And you go, no, it's just not my thing. But now you can stick it to them and be like, oh, I'm reading A Gentleman in Moscow. And you can tell them what happens, and they're impressed. And now you're in the circle, and they have to include you in things. Take that, Janice. You thought you could shun me out of your little group? For whatever reason you're here, we're glad to have you.
Fuck you, Janice.
I'm kidding, obviously. I love all people.
Love Janice.
I love all people named Janice.
You said trash. Treat you like trash. You haven't read A Gentleman in Moscow.
I'm sure
you are absolute trash.
I'm sure there are groups like that.
Probably.
Oh yeah, we went to college with some that would be like that. It's like, you haven't read this.
Exactly. So if you just want a general gist, we got you covered. Hey, hopping into stuff. What are you guys drinking today?
I'm drinking a Robert Mondavi rum barrel-aged Merlot.
I am having a Apothic Crush soft red blend. 2021 notes of velvety, smooth fruit.
Sounds good. And I am drinking this Fruit Farm San Antonio strawberry guava wine. It's very sweet. I really like it.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's nothing else to talk about, you guys ready to head to Moscow?
Yep.
All right. Grab yourself a drink, snuggle up in a cozy corner, and get ready to get lit. Okay, so doing something a little bit different starting off, because since this is kind of a historical piece, it takes place in Russia during the 1910s and 20s. None of us are Russian, and Andrea and I took a couple Russian history classes, but I don't really remember my Russian history. So I'm going to start us off with a little history lesson so everyone knows what's going on at the start of this. So starting off with the Russian Revolution of 1917, leading up to this, there was just a lot of things that went bad for Russia. Mm-hmm. There's a boom in population, which resulted in overcrowding, bad living conditions. There's a harsh growing season and a series of wars that created a food shortage. Many educated Russians at the time felt like growth was being hampered by the Tsar and his supporters in the aristocrat class because Russia industrially was just very behind the times. And they had established the Duma after a 1905 revolution, which was supposed to be a representative assembly to work towards reform, but they made it to where the Tsar could literally just dismiss it if they opposed him.
Right.
Kind of like how they still have a Duma.
Yeah.
And Putin can do this.
Right.
To their Duma now. So it seems like nothing's really changed. He can literally just like dismiss their entire Congress, basically. But anyway. So yes, the Tsar could literally just dismiss the Duma if they opposed him. So finally, in March 1917, there was a revolution of protesters and people striking, and Tsar Nicholas abdicated the throne, and the Duma formed a provisional government. But that wasn't the end, because the Duma didn't know what they were doing. They decided to continue in their war involvement, like during World War I, even though it further exacerbated their food supply problems. So come the Bolshevik Revolution in November of that year, led by Lenin, where he led a coup against the Duma and took over. And there's a lot of mention of Bolsheviks in the story.
Mm-hmm.
So just know that basically a Bolshevik is another name for a communist. It's just the name. They were the Bolshevik Party, but then they changed it to the Communist Party. So they're in control now. And then a freaking civil war breaks out in 1917 after this. And just what you need to know there is Lenin has his Red Army, because I think it mentions it in the book. And the fighting goes on until 1923, when Lenin finally claims victory and establishes the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the years that we're dealing with. The story starts off in 1922, when the Red Terror is going on, and just like a countless amount of people are getting taken by the Russian secret police, the Cheka, and interrogated on whether or not they were threats to the Bolsheviks, especially the nobility, since the revolution basically just overthrew all the nobility.
Right.
Like, the Bolsheviks was like the working class of men.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we start in the book.
Yep.
June 21st, 1922, where Count Alexander Ilyich Rostov is at a hearing for Russian internal affairs. It's over the case of a poem he wrote in 1913, which sounded very anti-revolution in the eyes of the Bolsheviks.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also some people who see him as a hero of the revolution. And so what they decide is that he's going to be placed under house arrest for the rest of his life at the Metropole Hotel where he had been living. And if he ever leaves, he will be shot.
Yeah.
So that is basically like our prologue. And everything.
Could be worse.
Hey, yeah. It mentions it later, but whenever he goes back to the hotel, everyone is staring at him like they're seeing a ghost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, we literally thought whenever you were getting dragged off, they were just going to kill you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The Red Terror. So, two soldiers escort Rostov, and I'm going to be referring to him as Rostov throughout this, even though the book calls him the Count.
Mm-hmm.
They escort him back to his hotel rooms. They go up to the third floor where his luxurious room sits, an interconnected bedroom, bath, dining room, and grand salon with 8-foot windows overlooking Theater Square.
Oh, beautiful.
I know. He gets to the door, and there's an officer standing in front of his door. So he's like, "Can I help you?" The man says he's there to take him to his quarters. When Rostov says he is standing at the doors to his quarters, the man smugly replies, "Not anymore." The officer leads him up 3 more flights of stairs until they reach the attic that was originally used to house butlers and ladies' maids until that service fell out of fashion because we don't have a nobility anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the rooms are cluttered with broken furniture and other debris, but one small room will now be his housing. And there's nothing in it but a cast iron bed, a 3-legged bureau, and a small closet. The guard says the bellhops can help him to move whatever other belongings he can into his new quarters, but everything else will become property of the people. So he goes around his room, picking out as much as he can that's going to fit into his new room. Some chairs, lamps, plates, a coffee table, a trunk of clothes, and a desk. And as the bellhops are taking everything away, he starts walking through the rooms, looking at everything he will have to leave behind and reminiscing on his past. An hour later, he's in his new room, and he makes the connection that he used to long to go on steamboat or overnight train trips because of the small quarters,
Mm-hmm.
and how they just felt so quaint and everything. And didn't every boy dream of being Captain Nemo going 20,000 leagues under the sea in the Nautilus? Well, this is his life now. And also, I love one of the first things that happens to him is he gets up from sitting on his bed and he smacks his head into the sloped ceiling. So it's like, yeah, you're going to have to deal with that for the rest of your life.
Gotta get used to it being so small.
Yeah. So Rostov turns and sees 3 hotel staff sitting in his doorway. they're all looking at him like they've seen a ghost, like I said. And we find out because they thought whenever the officers took him to the Kremlin that morning, they were going to kill him.
Yeah, you go to the Kremlin, you're not expecting good news.
But Rostov says, no, for my crimes of being an aristocrat, they have sentenced me to this hotel for the rest of my life. So they're all happy that he's still alive, and they have a drink in his small quarters. And he knows that they're not only happy that he's alive, but since 1905, Russia had gone through a world war, a civil war, 2 famines, and the Red Terror. So they drink for the health of the nation and the fact that they are seeing their nation slowly heal.
Mm-hmm.
Very slowly.
Yes.
It ain't gonna get any better
No.
after this for a while. But they don't know that right now. After everyone leaves, he takes a seat at the desk and reminisces about his godfather, the Grand Duke, who took care of him when his parents died and who had given him the desk. And he starts running his hand over the surface and underneath it until he finds a catch. And then he presses it, and a little door opens up on one of the legs. And he tells us there is a secret opening in each leg of the desk, and inside are stacks of gold coins.
Mm.
Which I thought was really cool. As he begins to stir the next morning, Rostov, on the verge of consciousness, begins to dream of what he will do that day. He imagines himself walking out into the streets, grabbing a newspaper and a pastry from a small shop, and then going to the gardens to sit on a bench and admire the flowers before going to see his bankers. But no, he gains consciousness and realizes that he can't do things like that anymore, and he wonders if he could fall back asleep and pick up where he left off. But he decides against it, saying, imagining what might happen if one's circumstances were different was the only sure route to madness.
Mm.
So he gets up. Then there's a knock at his door. There's a servant with his breakfast, a lot of coffee, 2 biscuits, and a piece of fruit. The servant leaves, but leaves his door open to let some air in, and the hotel cat saunters in, a one-eyed Russian blue who surveys his new quarters and shakes its head. Rostov agrees with the cat that, yes, his new quarters are rather bleak. He thinks he was a bit too ambitious when getting all the furniture in his room, because now there's hardly any room. He checks the other rooms of the attics and finds one room that's not completely packed with crap. So he takes some of the furniture he can live without and moves it. The next thing he does is pick up a book and starts to read. But the sad part is that these aren't his books. All his favorite books are back in Paris, and these are his father's, which he doesn't really have a taste for. So I can't imagine that. Like, you're just stuck in a room with all these books.
It's all
that you
like
hate.
Philosophy
Yeah.
and ethics, and he's like, oh my god.
Let me read this economics textbook.
That would be hell.
It's like stuff like that. So he's like, oh god. But he's roused by his thoughts at a knock at the door. It's a man named Constantine, who is like a lender and trader of money, I think. So Rostov shows him the coin that had come from his desk. And we find out it's a very valuable piece, and it was printed in commemoration of Catherine the Great's coronation. So it doesn't really say it, but it kind of seems like Rostov is going to be like making a profit off of them. So he's going to be like selling these pieces of gold to this lender, and he's like, because since it is like they're valuable and everything, I think he's going to be like making a profit off of these. So then we go to the hotel's restaurant, the Boyarsky, which used to be the finest restaurant in Moscow until 1920, when the Bolsheviks prohibited the use of rubles in restaurants, closing them to 99% of the population.
Yeah, why would you do that?
Yeah. Well, because they're just trying to get rid of everything Imperial Russia. Because I looked it up, and their currency was still rubles, but they were Soviet rubles.
Oh, so they're different.
Yeah, so they're different. And I'm sure the ruble to Soviet ruble currency ratio is not the same.
Right, okay. So it's just a way to really pry on the lower class.
Yeah, it's like controlling them more.
Yeah.
So I didn't look that up.
I didn't know that there was a difference, yeah.
Yeah, because I saw that and it was like, oh, like it prohibited the use of rubles. And I was like, but wait, I was like,
What was it
Russia's
used?
form of currency is rubles. So what are they using? So I looked it up and it was like, oh, they're just Soviet rubles. So it's like different, a little bit different, just change it.
Different, but samesies.
Exactly. So we're in the Boyarsky. It talks about the chef there, Emil Zhukovsky, who was such a refined chef, and the larder was always packed. But during the times after the revolution, he had to try to meet the same expectations, but with very limited supply. And so Rostov kind of like breaks down his meal, and he's saying like, oh, instead of this, he had to use this. And it was very genius of him.
Mm-hmm.
And then we meet the maitre d', Andre, who Rostov says makes this place work like a well-oiled machine. And they just talk for a little bit. And then Rostov goes back to his room, and he's thinking about how he's going to master his circumstances while being sentenced to a life of confinement. And he mentions a lot of historical figures that had sought revenge to keep them from going insane, like in their exile. So like Napoleon and Cervantes. But no. Rostov's plan is basically to take things one step at a time, figure out his priorities, and staying alive, all while like keeping an eye on a way out of his mess. And when Constantine was there, Rostov had sent out 3 letters with him when he had left, and this is basically how he's going to be like getting his
Anything
stuff
he
to live.
wants from the outside.
Yeah.
So somebody else is gonna have to get it for him.
Exactly. So he like comes back to the room and there's some linens, a pillow, some soap, and then there's a little box with a pastry in it, just stuff that he has to get from the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day Rostov is trying to read again, but he just can't get into this book.
This part is so relatable.
I know.
He's like, I'm gonna read to like chapter.
Yeah.
And it's gonna make time go by so fast.
Yeah, so Rostov just like really doesn't like this book, but he's like, what are you gonna do? And he's sitting there and he hears the clock ticking and ticking, and he keeps getting distracted.
He keeps looking at it.
Yeah.
And he says something like, well, who wouldn't? It's a fine clock.
It's a fine clock.
Super relatable. I have trouble
Fancy
focusing
chronometer,
sometimes.
I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
Chronometer.
And he says like he has to go back a few pages to like
my place.
man, like
I'm not absorbing this.
Yeah, I'm not absorbing anything I'm reading. So he's finally like, okay, I'm not gonna look up until I read the 25th essay in this book. So he's reading and starting off good, but once he gets to essay like 12, 13, he's slowing down and getting bored with it. And then the clock strikes 12 and he starts racing down the stairs because he has an appointment with the barber.
Yes.
So he's like just trying to kill time the best that he could. And I can't stress how nice of a hotel this is.
It's very nice.
Because he comes to the lobby and there's a newsstand, and then he passes up this like boarded up flower shop that went out of business. And he like talks about like, oh well, like it'll come back and everything. And the Metropole Hotel is a real hotel in Moscow. Like I looked it up.
Okay.
And it's gorgeous.
Ooh.
Yeah. So like I looked up like the hotel that's in it, the Boyarsky and everything, and it's just like, yeah, this grand place, chandeliers, tables, awesome. I'm just like, oh my gosh. But yeah, seriously, like I've never heard of a hotel having a flower shop.
That's cool.
Like, that's so cool. And a barber for that matter.
Right.
Because like, yeah, it's a good thing you're staying at this place because it has basically everything you need.
Its own little community.
Exactly. So he goes to the barber, he walks in, and Yaroslav the barber is working on another client. And Rostov likens his working and the movements of his fingers to ballet dancers and Cossacks doing the hopek, which is the whole like squatting down and then you like
Hey,
thrust your feet out. Yaroslav then started working on Rostov's hair, and Rostov glances at this other customer in the shop, and this guy is like bright red. And the guy's like, hey, I was next. But Rostov is like a gentleman. He's trying to be polite, but he's like, oh, like, I'm so sorry, but I have a standing appointment with him every Tuesday at noon. Just trying not to be rude. But this guy is just pissed off. So he gets up, marches over to Yaroslav, and takes one of his scissors. Then he goes over to Rostov, grabs him, and snips the right side of his mustache off, and says, "You'll have your appointment soon enough." And then he storms out. And Rostov's like shaken and mad too. He wants to echo Yaroslav's indignation, but he's like, well, he might be one of the Bolsheviks who have been living in the hotel, so like I better not get on his bad side and everything. Because I don't think I mentioned it, but like a lot of these Bolsheviks have been living like on the second floor of this hotel, like doing a lot of work, basically. So he's just like, better not get on this guy's bad side. So he tells Yaroslav that he was perfectly in the right because he had been waiting. And then he tells Yaroslav to give him a clean shave.
Yes.
Erasing his symbol of aristocracy.
Yeah, poor mustache.
That he's got that nice little quote right there. It says, the Count took pride in wearing a well-tailored jacket, but he took greater pride in knowing that a gentleman's presence was best announced by his bearing, his remarks, and his manners, not by the cut of his coat.
So he's still going to carry himself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. He is. Even though he's being in prison for being a nobility, Rostov,
Still has his dignity.
He has his dignity. He is so, well-mannered. And I love how, whenever he's, describing the restaurant and everything, it's just like, man, this place used to be, so nice. And, the wait staff was all, punctual and, on top of things. But now it's just, crap. So, yeah, Rostov never loses his noble nature.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout all of this. So we come to the second restaurant that is housed in the Metropole that Rostov calls the Piazza. And it's not as elegant as the Boyarsky, but it feels like an extension of the city of Moscow. And Rostov explains, like I said earlier, how efficient the waiters there were and everything on point, just like everything at the Metropole before the war.
Yeah.
Now the Piazza is nearly empty, and the waiter he has taking his order is just subpar. And we start seeing how Rostov is getting restless staying at the hotel. It mentions him counting the steps on his way up and down the stairs. He comes to the Piazza at 12:01 exactly, and leaves at 1:35 exactly. And when he gets back to his room, he's just counting the minutes until he can go back down and get a drink. And so he's sitting there, waiting for his food. He's looking around the room, and he sees this young girl staring at him. She's 9 years old and the daughter of a widowed Ukrainian bureaucrat. And he says she has the penchant for yellow.
Mm-hmm.
She's always wearing a yellow dress or something yellow. So he turns to his food for a little bit, eating. When he looks up, he's startled to find the girl standing at his table. And the first thing she asks him is, where his mustache is.
She says, where did they go? And he's like, ooh, your mustaches.
Rostov's like, it's kind of rude to ask.
It's just kind of rude.
Yeah. But he tells her that they flew away for the summer.
And she's like, I like it.
I like it.
I like your look.
Yeah, she tells him that she likes him better without a mustache. But the girl proceeds to sit in the other chair across from him, and they talk. And they end up sharing his food because the girl didn't like the food that she ate. So he gives her half of his lunch. And then she starts asking him if he's known any princesses. And then asks what their lives are like. The dancing, the balls, the castle. And then she asks him if he's been in a duel.
Oh, yeah.
And he says no. But he sees that she's disappointed. So he's like, well, my godfather was a second, though. And proceeds to tell her all about what seconds do as part of a duel. And he mentions that a gauntlet was thrown down at this very hotel, and the manager at the time kept a pair of pistols on hand, so if an incident occurred, the parties could be whisked away to the dueling grounds. So the girl finishes her meal, and then he basically just leaves. Later on, the Count goes to the bar where he usually gets a drink before supper, but he loses track of time, and he ended up staying there for 4 hours. So the bartender helps him to the lift, whereas Rostov proclaims, "I've never taken the lift a day in my life." So he starts going up the stairs, but he stops at the second floor, and he keeps thinking about duels and how duels used to be fought over the most horrific of crimes, but by the 1900s, heck, someone could just challenge you to a duel over the tilt of a hat, the duration of a glare, or the placement of a comma. And he also mentions how the number of paces one took depended on the crime. So, like, the most horrific would be very few paces to ensure one of the two men did not leave alive. And he says, nowadays, duels should be conducted with no fewer than 10,000 paces. So, in fact, having thrown down the gauntlet, appointed seconds, and chosen weapons, the offender should board a steamer bound for America, as the offended boarded another for Japan, where, upon arrival, the two men could don their finest coats, descend their gangplanks, turn on the docks, and fire. I like that part. So, 5 days later, he accepted a formal invitation to tea from his new acquaintance, Nina Kulikova, who we find out is the girl's name. They met at the hotel coffee house, and over tea and cakes, Nina asked him, in a continuation of their previous conversation, if he would do her the favor of sharing with her the rules of being a princess. Rostov is like, well, being a princess is not a game, but Nina is insistent, and is like, just tell me what is expected of a princess, because she apparently really wants to be a princess. So he starts telling her things like you need good posture, table manners, you need to know how to conduct yourself in society. And then he tells her she needs to respect her elders. And he's like, but not just like elder nobility, but you need to respect elders of every class, even the peasants. And she's like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, because like they like had a hand in, you know, like helping our generation.
Yeah, and she actually bows her head to him.
Yeah.
He's like, not me,
Not me.
I'm not old.
Yeah. He was like, the gray hair. So he ends up telling her a story of a princess who was going to an event, but ended up picking up this old lady who is needing to get to her son, who is a blacksmith who lives 7 miles away.
This part's funny.
I love this part, yeah. Now, she could have gone to the party and sent the old lady in the carriage on her way, but she was a good person and ended up going with the woman and missing the party, but having tea with the old woman and her family. So after he finishes the story, Nina is like, well, did she marry the son? And Rostov is like, good God, no. She just went back home. Like in fairy tales, you just marry someone.
Yeah,
for
she's kind of like a romantic, because when they talk about duels, they're like, why would they duel? Was it over a woman?
Was it
He's
over a
like,
woman?
no. She's like, that's kind of boring.
Like, there has to have been a woman involved.
There's always a woman involved, she says.
Yeah, so she's just like, ugh, like, she didn't marry.
She's like, I like my ending better.
Yeah. So it's like, no, like princesses don't marry blacksmiths. So that girl was just doing something nice for the old woman, and seeing her disappointment at the princess not marrying the blacksmith, Rostov was like, okay, well, I'm not going to finish the tale. That actually says that the hostess of the party she was supposed to be going to saw the girl's carriage speed away from the party, which caused a rift between the two families because they thought they had been jilted. And I love this girl because Rostov offers her like a piece of cake and she takes it and he's like, well, you didn't say please and thank you. And she's like, well, why should I thank you for the cake which you offered me when I didn't ask for it?
She's got a point.
I know. Like, I didn't ask for this. But Nina says that she shall work upon her posture, and I will be sure to say please and thank you whenever I ask for things, but I have no intention of thanking people for things I never asked for in the first place.
Yep.
So I love her. And then it's July 12th. Rostov is headed towards the Boyarsky restaurant when he's hailed by Nina behind one of the trees in the lobby. He goes over to her, and she says very cryptically, the gentleman has gone out to dine. So he's like, the gentleman? What? And they start going up the stairs to the 3rd floor. And as he's following her past the rooms, he realizes they're headed towards his old rooms. And then we have a little, like, record scratch moment. And we pause. And Rostov is like, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So we go back to that night where he had kind of gotten drunk. And he's like, with so little to do, but all the time to do it in, he started to be threatened by a sense of boredom. And it's only been 3 weeks at this point since his house arrest. And he's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to feel after 3 years? But he thinks back to historical works, and for the people who had lost their way, they always had a guide. So Theseus had Ariadne, Odysseus had Tiresias, Dante his Virgil, and Count Rostov had a 9-year-old girl by the name of Nina. He says that one day, as he sat at a loss of what to do with himself, he saw Nina running by, and he asked her where she was going. And she responds, the card room, because every Wednesday at 3, these 4 ladies come to play cards, and if she can get there early, she can hide in the cupboard and hear every word they're saying, and also eat the leftover cookies after they leave. So he's looking at her, and he's just like, how else do you spend your time? So she tells him to meet her at this spot tomorrow at 2, and says, this begins the Count's education.
Mm-hmm.
And so Rostov had been living at the Metropole for 4 years, and thought he knew everything about it. But once he started hanging out with Nina, he realized how wrong he had been. She had been staying temporarily in Moscow with her father, so she wasn't enrolled in school, and her governess wouldn't let her leave the hotel. So she spent her time going through each room, and Rostov is like, of course, within the Metropole there are rooms within rooms that I haven't seen, like the sorting room and the mail room and the cutting room inside Fatima's flower shop when it was still open, and laundries and pantries and linen closets and all this stuff. So they start working from bottom to top, and she takes him to the basement that has like the boiler room, the electrical room. There's kind of like a lost and found room with stuff left behind, and Rostov realizes that some of the things from his old room are down there. And they pass a locked door, and Nina says she's never been in there, but she takes off this necklace she's wearing, and Rostov realizes that there's a pass key for the hotel on it. But basically like a skeleton key, because it seems like she can get into every door of the hotel. And now I'm wondering where she got it from. Seriously.
She stole it.
Probably.
Seriously. Just like, where did you get this? So they fit it into the lock, and it opens. And on the other side, they find all this silver to use for banquets in the hotel. And Rostov remembers all the times he probably would have been served on silverware like this. But then he's curious, and he says, surely the Bolsheviks know about all this, and I wonder why they haven't carted it off. But he realizes that they would probably start having their own banquets soon, for pomp is a tenacious force. And Rostov basically states that, like, even though they overthrew the nobility, after a while there's going to be a new leader with medals of honor, and at formal dinners he may sit at a taller chair befitting a man of his esteem. So I think he's kind of trying to make a point about people who like initiate revolutions and like especially communism, where it's like every man should be equal, down with the nobility, but Rostov is just like, no, like you don't want everyone to be equal, you just want the power for yourself.
Yeah.
Basically, especially when like the dictators come over, and everything. It's just like, like you're
when that Soviet Union starts.
When that Soviet Union starts, and everyone is just fucked.
There's always someone higher up than you in the name, and it's all in the name of equality. Like, everything belongs to everybody, but there is somebody higher up profiting from all this misfortune.
Yeah.
Yeah, equality does not equal equity.
So, this is how Rostov and Nina spend their days, going through all the rooms of the hotel, and once they get done with the lower rooms, they start on the bedroom suites, which Rostov was hesitant to do at first. Obviously, you're going into people's living spaces and everything, but he realizes that every room has a different view of Moscow. that he describes. Like, this one, you can see the fruit sellers. This one, you can see the battalions marching in Red Square. And also there's a room where if you want to drop snowballs on an unsuspecting stroller, this is the perfect room. And then he says, if you want to see the arrival of guests at the theater, the best room was 317. So this is where we pick back up at the beginning of the chapter when Nina signals to him and he follows her up to his old suite. They're kind of just watching the people go into the theater, and Nina says that she wishes she were one of them and everything, and Rostov is just like, yep, that's how it goes. So back in his new attic room, Rostov is sadly thinking about his old suite and the room and freedom he used to have. His new room is just so small. Getting up, he goes to the closet, and looking at it, he realizes that it must have been built in an old door frame. So he takes everything out of his closet, feels the thinness of the back of the closet, and he kicks it down to discover the interior of the neighboring closet. So he goes out that door into the room next to his, which just had some old bed frames in it. And he gets to work moving everything around. He goes to the basement and brings up the stuff of his that had been moved down there, along with some things that weren't his, but he was like, I can get some use out of that. There were a lot of books down there. So he does all of this until he has a little study going on. And then he nails shut the front of that door, so the only way into that second room would be to go through his closet. So now he has this like a secret little room.
It's doubled up.
Exactly. And then one day Nina comes to Rostov and asks if he'll hang out with her, spying on the people in the ballroom. Rostov is like, no, I don't want to do that because they've just been having a lot of assemblies there recently. And these assemblies consisted of the Bolsheviks establishing codes, setting courses of action, levying complaints. And he's like, so boring.
It's already August. It's hot.
Yeah, but he goes anyways. So Rostov is looking out at the assembly, and he's like, nothing's changed, really. Like, there's the main guy sitting in the chair where the Grand Duchess would have sat, and people coming up and paying their respects. People are touring the room, shaking hands, talking to everybody, but then
This
they
is
leave.
the second time they've gone up there, because
Yeah.
he rips his pants
Yeah,
each time he goes up there.
yeah, because they have to spy on everyone. They have to like,
crouch.
go up in the balcony and like crouch down. So he ripped his pants the first time, and he ends up ripping them again. So yeah, they're just spying on these people in the ballroom, and he's just like, this is basically like the exact way that like a ball would go down. Like, these people talking to each other, paying their respects. People are like talking to everyone and then like leaving before stuff even starts, and then there are going to be people like coming in fashionably late because I have so much to do and not enough time to do everything. And he just says there's just far less cashmere. And he notices the guy standing on the dais who is dressed a bit shabby, and he's like, surely he can afford a tailored jacket, but I wonder if he's just dressed like this to ensure everyone else that he's a hardworking member of the working class. Like, you don't want to stand out and look too important, too noble.
Too bourgeois.
Too bourgeois. So they're sitting there. The Bolsheviks get through a lot of proposals, but they get stuck on amending the Union Charter. And it's a specific word, just facilitate.
Yeah, they're like, ew.
Yeah, they're like, that's too girly a word. Like, we need a manly word to do justice to the labors of men. Facilitate. That's not a girly word. So they settle on to enable and ensure. And then this other guy pipes up asking, like, oh, why should we use two words when one would suffice? And everyone, like, bashes him.
Like, you're an idiot.
That kind of made me think of 1984 and, like, the Newspeak dictionaries that they were talking about, like, in that book. And it's just like, oh, like, our dictionaries are going to be, like, teeny tiny now because we're just, like, trying to make everything, like...
What's that? What is it? Why use... so many words when few words do trick or something like that.
Exactly. It's just like, okay, you're trying to like cut down words so people can't like fully like express themselves in writing. It's like censorship.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, after all of that, Rostov goes to the seamstress. He ripped his pants again.
And she's like, again?
Yeah.
Weren't you just here?
Yeah, so the girl's kind of talking to him, just like, what do you do with her? And it's just like, oh, just talking and having fun. He was like, we used to talk about princesses, but now she's like been really into these like assemblies, like wanting to go watch. So the girl's kind of just like, oh yeah, like that happens.
Kids growing up.
Kids grow up really fast. So after getting his pants fixed, he goes out the door and bumps into the bellhop who says the manager of the hotel, Mr. Holicky, was waiting for him. And the point of their meeting is basically Mr. Holicky had heard some of his staff still referring to Rostov by Your Excellency, which is a no-no when you've just had a revolution and banished the nobility, and now communism is the dictator,
Right.
who states that everyone is equal. So Mr. Holicky is just like, I'm gonna have to ask them to stop doing this. I feel bad, but the Bolsheviks are everywhere in this hotel. So Rostov, the gentleman that he is, replies with, it is the business of the times to change, Mr. Holicky, and it is the business of gentlemen to change with them. I love that quote.
Mm-hmm.
So Mr. Holicky is called out into the hallway by Arkady, and Rostov gets up and looks at some paintings on the wall, and he thinks of carefully crafted things that have outlived their usefulness. And on thinking this, he counts 2 panels over from one of the paintings and gives the panel a push. And he hears a click, and the panel pops open to reveal a hidden cabinet, just as the Grand Duke had described.
Mm.
And inside was an inlaid box, and he lifts the lid and gazes at the perfect craft that's inside. But we don't know what it is.
Dang.
Because he doesn't mention it. And I just love the whimsical nature of this hotel, all the secrets that it holds. So we have like hidden panel like in the wall. We have like his little like in his desk, like the hidden compartment.
Mm-hmm.
And then like his new room that he made is kind of like a little like secret room too.
I'm sure it's probably going to come into play later.
Yeah.
Or like maybe he has to like hide in there
Yeah.
or something.
So there's like a whimsical nature to this hotel. And then one night Rostov is at the bar, and Arkady comes to him and says the gentleman barged into his old room where Commander Tarkovsky now resided and was asking for him. We find out that it's Mikhail Mindich, an old friend from Imperial University from back in 1907. Mikhail had come from a single-parent working home, and his friendship with Rostov seemed very bizarre because they were so different, but it flourished and they became very best friends. So they go up to his rooms, and Mikhail proceeds to pull out a bottle of wine, and we find out that the Rostov family has a long tradition of gathering together on the 10th anniversary of a family member's death to send a toast to them, and it was 10 years to the day where the Grand Duke, Rostov's godfather, had died. So Mishka, which is Mikhail's nickname, tells Rostov that they're in a new age, the age of steel, where they have the ability to build power stations, skyscrapers, and airplanes. And he talks of this Shukov radio tower in which they will be able to broadcast the latest news and intelligence. And Mishka is part of the Russian Association of Proletarian Writers, and he tells Rostov that no longer is poetry an art of quatrains and dactyls, but has become an art of action. And Rostov thinks that if it was coming from anyone else, he would be amused that it was not enough for a poet to write in verse, but it has to essentially be new and edgy for the times. And then they just continue to drink and toast to their loved ones. So it almost sounds like Mishka is kind of in favor of the revolution, just kind of from like the way he's talking. I just kind of felt like he was like, yeah, like the working man is like having their day now.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he wants all the poems need to be like a call to action.
Mhm.
But it kind of made me think. I was like,
Definitely a difference of opinion.
yeah. So I was just like, I was like, is this guy one of the Bolsheviks? Like, are you in favor of communism? But we'll see. So we skip ahead. It's now late December, and walking through the lobby, Rostov feels a rush of cold air coming from the coat room. So he goes in and smells the scent of winter on the jackets, and it flashes him back to Christmas time with his sister, and them visiting the neighbors and having a grand old time at feasts with drinking and music. And on the way home, they would take things slow, and they would listen to the bells of the Church of the Ascension, of St. Michael's, and St. Sophia's as they peal the hour of midnight. Then Rostov remembers in 1918 when the Red Cavalry had come and taken the bells to use for the manufacture of artillery, and he thinks the bells had been constructed from cannons used by Napoleon, which before that they had been forged by the bells of La Rochelle in France. So he's like, where does it end from bells to cannons and back again until the end of time? Just this like time of peace, time of war, time of peace, time of war.
Mm-hmm.
So we're brought back to the piazza where Rostov says,
also, back to the bells part. Yeah. There's that part where, what is it? I forget what it's called. Not the minister, but whatever. He goes out to stop the Red Cavalry. Like, you can't take the bells.
Yeah.
And they're like, and then they toss him from the tower. Because it says, what's this? It says something about, they say one should render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And with that, he instructed the men to drag the abbot up to the belfry steps and hurl him from the steeple into the arms of his maker. Yeah.
He did.
He did. Yep, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Like, dang, that's a cold line. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. And then tosses him into the arms of his maker.
Pretty brutal. Yeah. So we're brought back to the piazza where Rostov says back then it would be festooned with such garlands and lights, and there would be an orchestra and such revelry, but now it's turned into a shell of its former self. But the good news is that Nina is there, and Rostov wishes her a Merry Christmas. Nina says she's meeting her father for dinner, but she ordered herself a small treat, and this guy comes out with like a tower of ice cream. So as they sit and eat the ice cream, Nina tells him she will be starting school the next year, which he's not very excited about. But Rostov says it's a good thing, and that he had enjoyed school. And then Nina says, sometimes everybody tells you something because they're everybody, but why should one listen to everybody?
She's so wise.
Yeah.
Just because she doesn't like school.
Yeah. She was like, why should I do stuff just because everybody is saying this?
Yeah, because he's like, oh, you'll love like reading these stories, and then she's like, everybody told me that. Everybody's told me that.
Yeah, like she says, the only difference between everybody and nobody is all the shoes. So, and then like on the next page, Rostov is telling her that school broadened her horizons, and she's like, wouldn't travel achieve that more effectively? Because she's like, you're talking about like, horizons. Like the horizon. Like the horizontal line limit of sight. Like if you say I should broaden my horizons, maybe I should just travel. But changing the subject, Rostov then gives a toast and says that it's a pleasure to have found a new friend in her, and he presents her a gift, which is his grandmother's opera glasses, which Nina tells him she will treasure until her dying days. And then Rostov says that it's no wonder she doesn't have a present for him because she's 9. But Nina then beckons a man over to him, and he's holding a yellow box tied with a ribbon. and Nina tells him to not open the box until midnight.
It's a pretty big box.
Yeah, it's a pretty big box.
Don't open it till midnight.
Yeah, and like, Nina's also told him like she's going away for like Christmas vacation, essentially, to like visit family, but she'll be back in January. So she leaves and goes to have dinner with her father. And he's about to go get a drink and then go back to his room to wait until midnight so he can open the box, when he starts eavesdropping on this couple at a table next to him. And he's like, the start of a romance. And he's commenting on his head on like, oh, the guy should have done that or talked about this. Like,
yeah, so
what's he gonna order?
Yeah, so he's trying to figure out what to order to impress the lady. And then the guy's like, and a wine?
Yeah.
And he picks a wine, and he's like, oh, I would not have picked that one.
Because he can't seem too poor for this girl, but he also shouldn't break the bank. So he ends up ordering some stew, and Rostov is like, oh, good choice. Like in his head. And then, yeah, when the waiter asks if he'd like wine for the meal, and he suggests Rioja, Rostov is like, oh gosh, I have to interject, because this kid, I love this line. He says, this kid doesn't know a Burgundy from a Bordeaux, and a Rioja would ruin the entire meal. So he interjects and suggests Mukuzani for the couple. And he's basically just like, man, that waiter sucks. Not only had he failed in his purpose, he had put his customer in a corner. Because, like, Rostov, he's trying to get this guy laid. Like, good for him. So the way that Rostov, like, keeps complaining about the service in this restaurant, I think he needs to, like, be a waiter there.
Yeah, so
And everything.
he does say, like, this is the piazza or whatever.
Yeah.
Back then it used to run efficiently, kind of like Andre had the other one running. But he notices, like, this waiter is new, but the old waiter would come up and be like, may I suggest this wine?
Yeah.
Be a good pairing with this food. But he lets that guy order that crappy wine. It's just like, all right, I'll do it.
Rostov's like, you're gonna ruin the entire meal. I love it. Like he knows the menu.
This is a very Frasier scene.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Yeah, like Rostov knows the menu back and forth. He knows what wine like pairs the best with everything. So I think he needs to start working there. So he also decides to order the stew and the wine for himself for supper. And after he gets it, he's like, oh yeah, that's good. And the couple catch his eye and they give him a little toast of gratitude. So after dinner, as Rostov enters the lobby, he notices a quartet of string players coming into play.
Oh, also he orders ice cream.
He does order ice cream, which he doesn't eat.
No, he gives it to the cat.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
But his friend we're about to meet asks, is that ice cream?
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the violinists catches his attention, and he notices that it's Prince Nikolai Petrov, whom he hadn't seen since 1914 when the boy was only 13. And yeah, Petrov is just like, are you carrying ice cream? And Rostov's like, oh, it's not for me. So Rostov calls to him and they chat a bit. And Nikolai mentions that, it's not easy to find work, but he can get hired for an event every now and then. And Rostov has so many questions to ask him about his family, but he knows he can't keep Nikolai from his appointment. And they make a date to meet for drinks later on Saturday night.
So good.
Yeah. When Nikolai says he has another event at the Metropole, and the Count says he will look forward to it. Then we get a long footnote about Nikolai and how actually he will not be keeping his appointment.
Yeah, he says
with
something
Rostov.
like, in like Russian literature, you have to remember all these names, but I'm going to tell you, you don't have to remember Nikolai's name.
Yeah. The start of the footnote was just like, all right, you actually don't have to remember this guy because there are only like, what it said, like there are only like 30 names that Russian people like use. So you basically have to refer to someone by their first, middle, and last name. like whenever you're talking to them, because there like might be like there are a million Alexanders,
And Nikolai.
a million Nikolais, Dimitris, Annas, like all of that. So yeah, he starts off with, all right, you're actually not gonna have to remember this character and everything. So Nikolai's not going to be keeping his appointment with Rostov. When the nobility fell, his family's great estate was divvied up, and their house became a sort of like apartment with multiple families living in each different room.
Mm-hmm.
And he still lived in one of the rooms of his old houses. But when he got home that night, there had been people from the Cheka, which is the secret police, who had come to search his rooms. And in a book, he had a picture of Tsar Nicholas II, which was a crime, because anything pertaining to Imperial Russia was a crime.
Right.
So
Of course.
poor Nikolai was taken to a place and held and questioned on his loyalties, and thankfully they didn't kill him, but he is banished from Moscow and from 5 of like other like larger cities,
large cities in Russia.
of Russia. But it says that the good thing is that he spared the knowledge that the Cheka later came after his old instructor, and he is killed because he had hired, and I love this, former person, Nikolai Petrov, to play in his quartet, besides a clear prohibition against doing so. So, anybody who thinks communism is a good idea, why? You can literally get killed for having an acquaintance with someone who was brandished a traitor, even if you didn't know they were breaking the law.
Right.
Something like that guy got killed just because he knew Nikolai before he was banished
Right.
and everything. So, Russia, not your best moment. Sorry. Anyways, we go back to Rostov, who's in his study, and he's reading A Christmas Carol and has a glass of port while he waits for the stroke of midnight to open Nina's gift. And the clock suddenly strikes 12, and Rostov opens the box to find another box. And he opens that box and finds another box. And he keeps doing this for 3 more boxes until he's left with this small matchbox-sized box. And in this box, Nina has gifted him a passkey to the hotel. So he's thinking all these good thoughts, and the future looks bright. But then we get an ominous warning that says, if only the ghost of Christmas yet to come was here to show itself to Rostov, he would have known that in less than 4 years he would be climbing up to the roof of the Metropole Hotel in his finest jacket with the resolve to throw himself over the parapet and plummet to the streets below.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of
That's
Book
the
One.
end of Book 1.
Ugh. But it's so good so far.
What's going to happen?
So we know what's going to happen.
We know that he's at least going to
Consider
he's going to consider throwing himself off the roof. What do you guys think so far? Anything else to add? Anything that because I glanced over like a lot
Yeah.
of what happened. I was obviously trying to just like pick out like the most important parts
Mm-hmm.
that we read.
No, I don't think I have anything else to add.
Yeah. But there was like just I love his like description of everything, because he's a gentleman, so he's describing it in a very like, I don't know, genteel way.
It does feel very Frasier.
Yeah,
and I do like
he's
that a lot.
very like Frasier.
Yeah.
Talking about all these epics throughout history. Like he mentions the Odyssey and the Aeneid a ton.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There was a cool line where he's like in the very beginning, he's talking about how his sister liked to do like embroidery,
Mm-hmm.
and he was wondering like, where's all this embroidery going? Because like everywhere in our house has something embroidered on it.
Yeah.
And so he wonders if she's taking it apart at night to redo it, like Penelope in the Odyssey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she would do that whenever he read to her. So I was like, "Are you doing that just so I like
So he'll
reading
keep
to
reading
you?"
to you.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, I didn't mention that he has a sister, but since you mentioned books, that book of his dad's that he was reading that he just couldn't get into, he ends up using that
As the-
book as the fourth leg
On that table.
on that broken bureau. and everything.
Yeah.
One of the guys
He
comments
said
on it.
you just couldn't get into it, and he was like, "En contraire, I find it quite useful."
It's the perfect size. Yeah, I love that. So, all right, but yeah,
It's good so far.
So far. So, next chapters that we're going to be reading, we're going to start book 2 and then read up to the chapter An Arrival, which, if you are reading from the book, that page is 229. That's all I have for the book.
So for me, I listened to this on audiobook, and I really tried to focus. I don't think audiobooks are for me. I had trouble following.
This one,
So
yeah.
Spark Notes helped me a lot on this as well. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to end
I
up
think-
buying it and reading it myself.
Because this is told in such a way that's like there's those little cliff notes and stuff. I would be kind of lost listening to it on an audiobook.
Yeah.
Like, why is he saying this? Is he
Yeah.
saying this to us? Is like,
It felt a little sporadic with the audiobook, but I think I'm going to just have to get the book itself and continue on from there. Because honestly, it is really enjoyable, but like I said, it was kind of hard to follow with the audiobook.
Good job.
So I think I'll enjoy it more next week.
Yeah. And I will say, I know that, which I do have like the book copy, and I kind of wish I had this on Kindle, but I already have the book copy, so I'm reading it. But they have a lot of French words that they say
yeah,
because a lot of the nobility in Russia like learned French. So they have a lot of French words that he says, and I'm kind of just like, man, I wish I knew what you were saying. So I have to which I mean, I can look it up on my phone or whatever, but it would just be a little bit easier if I
he
just had
uses
that
a lot
Kindle with the you can
French
click on a
language.
word and it pulls up a dictionary description.
I don't think I did that to any of the French words. There were
Really?
some just like English, and I was like, what the heck does that mean? Hold on. There was circumambulate.
Circumambulate.
And flotsam and jetsam. I was like, what does that mean?
That's like sea debris.
Yeah.
I do know that, yeah.
Just like debris. Trees.
But I like it. I'm excited to see.
And
what this next
circumambulate is literally like walking around something.
walking around something.
Yeah, like I think
Like
this is where they're
pacing.
talking about pacing. And so he
Oh, okay.
circumambulates around the room.
Okay, so he was talking probably about Mishka.
Yeah,
Because it
'cause he-
said that he paces a lot.
Yeah, well, the guy comes and gets him and says, he's wearing a hole in the carpet. He's like, what do you mean? And he's just pacing back and forth. But yeah.
But yeah, if we don't have anything else to do, did anybody read anything else this week? or-
I did.
What'd you read?
I've been reading Fourth Wing. It's so good. I still have 150 pages left. It's so good.
I've been seeing a lot of posts saying that book is a little overhyped, but you really enjoy it.
I do. But I feel like they say that about
They say that about a lot of
guitars
stuff.
If you
and
like it, you read it.
everything. So that's one reason I didn't want to read it, because I was like, I'm feeling this is just not going to be good.
Yeah.
And it's about dragons, and I was like, dragons, cheesy. But I actually really love the dragons in this book.
Mhm.
They're so cool. And they have personality, so when you bond with one, they can talk to you.
Mm.
It's cool, in your head. And
That's
you can
cool.
talk to them and just through your head.
Yeah.
But the main character, she bonds with one that's kind of like a butthole. And he's like a sassy
Dragon.
That would be my dragon, probably.
And she's just like, shut up. Like, he's like saying something in her head. And he's just like, oh my God, will you just like shut up? Like, I'm trying to concentrate.
Yeah, not gonna lie, that would totally be my dragon.
It's like, oh my gosh, can this person shut up? And I'd be like, I was thinking the same thing.
And did you read anything?
Not really. I read a couple pages of Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. So far it feels like things I already knew. It's just a good reminder.
Mm.
You know, being a good person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, it's been fun. Nothing else so far though.
Yeah, that's fine. I didn't read anything this week just because, you know, we read so much for December.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to take a break for a little bit.
No smut.
No smut this month.
There's a little bit of smut in Fourth Wing.
I wish I would have read a little more. This week was a little crazy though.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll probably have something next week though. Small baby.
I should too, yeah.
All right. I think Andria has a dream she wants to share with us. I'm
Okay,
excited.
hold on. Let me pull it up. I had this like in 2018, so this is an old dream, but I wrote it down.
Oh, this is when this is before or after we met?
This is before, because it says March 15th, 2018.
Okay. Oh, this is like a couple weeks before we met.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to, it's not written very well, so I'm just going to read it as it's written. All right. March 15th. I dreamt that a girl and her mom are driving down a highway as they are out looking for pets to rescue. The girl notices something strange. 2 tigers are running beside their truck.
Oh.
The girl asks her mother if she sees it, and the mother says, no. And then a speedy semi with a lifelike camel on the side drives by the daughter, and she asks again if the mom saw that. And she says, yes. And then, as they are both looking out the girl's window, they see the tigers and rhinos running along the side. The mom kicks the truck into overdrive because the interstate wasn't busy because it was later at night. They lose the animal, finally, after taking an exit further down the line. They come to a red light, and the mom tells the girl to call the police. She tries, but there isn't any signal. The girl relaxes and looks out the window to see John Goodman in a semi that's hauling logs.
What?
Wait, was this the same semi that had the camel on?
No, this one's hauling logs. This is a
Okay.
different one.
Okay.
I was going to ask you if you remember, did you watch Jumanji recently? But not John Goodman.
So John Goodman's in a semi hauling logs. And they meet, it says they meet gazes. They meet each other's eyes. And his smile made her happy.
That's John Goodman for you.
Of course. As her mom goes to say they'll try to call when they get signal, something thuds. And the girl looks out to see the blood of John Goodman
No.
splattered and drug on the ground.
Oh no.
The next thing she sees is a dinosaur head breathing by her side. The mom throws a loud box of snacks out the window.
Loud box of snacks.
And the dinosaur chases it in that direction. The mom keeps throwing stuff, and the dinosaur gets angry when he can't find the food. He destroys an empty car on the side of the road and wrecks through the tree line. And then I woke up.
Okay, so little Jurassic Park. Little Jumanji.
I don't think I watched any of those before I had this dream.
I was gonna say you two were living together at the apartment at the time of this dream.
I couldn't even tell you what was going on at that time.
No.
Like, why you would be thinking about all that.
Right.
I definitely hadn't watched anything with John.
This was your last semester of college. I mean,
I was stressed.
stress dream.
All these things chasing me, and then there's a little glimpse of happiness when I see John Goodman, and then he gets mauled.
Happiness just gets ripped from you. Oh man, you're right. It is called all the papers.
Oh yeah,
Tests.
yeah. That was one of my dreams.
Okay.
Wow. What a dream. I still have an idea for a piece I want to write. It's one I mentioned a few weeks ago. I still keep thinking about it, so I think I might actually commit some of it to paper. But we'll see what happens.
Nice.
I think it's a cool idea.
Yeah.
I just got to flesh it out and actually put some thought into it.
You're not going to tell us the idea and keep it to yourself.
I mentioned it.
You don't want to steal
I
it.
mentioned it a few weeks ago, so it is on one of these episodes. But I am going to keep it to myself now.
You can work on it. You can read a little bit of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind to. Again, we're sorry there's no smut this episode.
I'm sorry. So much.
It's going to be no smut January.
No smut January.
We need well, I don't know if we need a cleanse, but
Cleanse.
a no smut cleanse.
Now that we're done with December of Desire, I know that Andria had sent me like a Christmas smut book, didn't you? And I was
Probably.
like, oh, I should have read that. And then I found some and I was like, I sent it to you and I was like, oh, we should have read these.
There was a bunch.
There's just too many.
Too many Christmas themed ones.
Too many to go over, but we will do this again in the future.
The smut's not over.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just on pause.
Yeah. Alright, so if y'all are ready, I have a little piece of literary news.
Absolutely.
Alright, so this little piece of news came out the day after Christmas. Salman Rushdie's book, The Satanic Verses, has finally come back to Indian bookshops after being banned in India for 36 years. The 1988 novel, which Rushdie claims was inspired by the life of the Prophet Muhammad, was banned due to its supposed blasphemy and after riots erupted over its content.
Oh.
So Salman Rushdie even had to go into hiding for a while after it came out.
Jeez.
That's just like how bad it was.
Mhm.
And it said that a couple of years ago, he was like at an event and he actually got attacked and lost an eye because someone was like still mad about the book.
Wow. I mean, you got to think though, like, even though it was negatively seen, just think like how powerful he must have felt to cause all of that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, wow, to have that much influence over a book.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if people are like have a huge impact about your book,
Mhm.
you're obviously like
You're touching something.
You're obviously like making people think.
Yes, you're onto something.
And people are scared.
And of course, I don't know what this book entails.
So yeah, me neither.
It sounds like it could potentially be satanic, but you said that it's not necessarily satanic.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go over a little bit. So the article says that the reappearance of the Satanic Verses has nothing to do with freedom of speech, but missing paperwork.
Oh.
And they said the original government order banning the book's import could not be found in India's bureaucracy, leading to its overturning. And then this one person is quoted, like someone in the high court said, "We have no other option except to presume that no such notification exists." So
That's just classic government censorship.
yeah. So obviously the sales of this book have skyrocketed in India since it's been so long.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are curious to read it. And one person stated, "It feels unreal seeing it in the bookstore because it's like seeing the unicorn you've been hearing about all your life." However, there are some Muslim organizations that have called for a reinstatement of the ban, arguing that the novel insults Islamic beliefs, while Rushdie himself consistently maintains that the Satanic verses is just a work of fiction and contains nothing offensive.
Oh, okay, I see. So I can understand where the uproar is then, because it does include the Prophet Muhammad,
Yes.
which is a sacred figure,
Yeah.
and this is a work of fiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, like I've never read this book before. I had to look it up. So like I can't really say anything about it. I'm also not Muslim, so I don't know what kind of like blasphemy stuff. So like a general synopsis on the book is it tells the story of two men who are transformed into the archangel Gabriel and the devil, respectively, and then both men must endure those changes as they grapple with the reality around them and several visions that may or not be real. And like I read a little thing that went a little like deeper into it, and it has like some like spoilers and everything, so I won't say anything. So I was just like, so I actually downloaded it onto my Kindle because it's only $6 right now. So I might try to read that this year and see what all the hype is about. Because like I said, I've never read it before. I'm not Muslim. I can't say anything about it. So
I'm sort of just looking it up right now and
mm-hmm.
seeing what all was said.
Maybe I need to look at the Goodreads.
It just seems like it was a case of... Well, I feel like a lot of the people that got upset about it probably didn't even read it. It was just the subject matter that they were upset about.
Well, yeah, they can't read it because it was banned.
Well, but while there were riots about it before it was banned.
Yeah.
Mm.
And as well with it being fictional. And you said you have it?
I did. I just downloaded it to my Kindle. So
Okay.
it's about 600 pages. So it's going to take me a little bit to get through it, but I'm going to try to read it this year.
Okay.
I think. I don't know anything about the Quran,
Me neither.
but I will try to read it.
I mean, heck, unlike you two, I've never read the Bible.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. That kind of blows my mind sometimes.
Well, you grew up in a religious household,
That's true.
and you went to Christian school.
Yeah.
My family was just never
sophomore
very
year of high school.
religious.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to church a few times with my grandparents, but
So, I mean, if you really truly yourself read the Bible, you're going to find things in it you don't like.
of course.
Now, if you go to like a church and they are giving you a sermon that a pastor has like nitpicked what they believe this verse means, and they'll tell you what they believe this verse means, you know, it's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
You might take something different if you completely read it. I mean, it's just like anything else you read. It's a text.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's thousands of translations of the Bible, so I think at the end of it, no one can really say what's
The Bible
true or not,
is
so
largely written by man.
yeah.
So take that as it is.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you find comfort in the Bible and Jesus, though, you should believe.
Oh
what you
yeah,
wanna
for
believe.
sure, for
So,
sure.
like we're not religious, but like,
Yeah,
obviously, like if you believe what you want to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Just, I
Believe
believe
what I
you should
believe.
thoroughly do your own research
Yeah.
and don't just go to church and listen to somebody tell you what's in the Bible. Like,
Yeah, it's always a good idea to form your own opinion about it.
On another note, I brought up last week how I wondered how the reception of What Dreams May Come was for Christians.
You didn't watch it, did you?
I did not. I had every intention to watch it this week, but I just got so busy. But I will try to.
It's worth a watch.
Yeah.
It's a great
Yeah.
movie.
I'm on this website called ChristianAnswers.net.
Ooh.
And he's telling them about, what happens in the book. And then there's like little questions on here. Reincarnation. Does the Bible support this belief in any way? And the answer is, it says this. The truth is, there are no second chances. Either you accept Christ as your Savior now, in this lifetime, or find yourself in hell.
No, that's not true.
There
That's
are no other options.
No. That's like, I feel like that's hardcore Christian, like evangelical type of belief.
I mean, that's what it says in the Bible.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Reincarnation's not a thing in the Bible. There's no
Believe in God or go to hell.
go to hell. So, to go to heaven, you have to accept Jesus Christ into your heart. And that's like called being saved. So you're saved in the church. And then your next step is a baptism where they dip you under the water that cleanses your sin, and you've truly adopted a life where you will follow Christ and be a disciple for him.
But if you fail, you can pray and ask. Catholics, you can go to confession, and then the priest is just
That's
alright, just say.
There's been several murderers
Hilarious.
in history that are like, I follow Jesus Christ.
I'm a
and-
born again Christian.
Yeah, Jesus Christ forgave me, so
Even though I killed 10 people.
yeah, I killed 10 people, dismembered them horribly. I'm saved in the blood of Christ. And a lot of murderers have said that. Before they go to the chair, they're like, I'm not afraid because I'm going to heaven.
I've always had this view of Christianity as being somewhat pure and accepting, and it doesn't sound like it is that way.
I mean, it's pretty accepting if murderers can go to heaven.
Yeah.
I'm talking about accepting as in you can believe in a heaven how you want, but you're telling me that's not the case. Heaven is what it is. You take it or leave it.
Yeah, there is no other heaven.
There's just the heaven.
There's the heaven, which is
Take it or leave it.
streets
it is how
paved
it is.
in gold and mansions, and you worship God daily.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like heaven to me.
Singing praises, and yeah. Then there's this little thing that says, they're talking about how in the movie it's Cuba Gooding Jr. is the spirit guide, and they're like, by the way, there are no such things as spirit guides. Angels are God's messengers.
Oh, I thought I was going to go another way.
And they are sent to help us. But spirit guides, as the New Agers teach it, are not sent from God. Talk to your pastor about this if you're confused. So basically...
There are no guardian angels is what that's saying? That's upsetting.
The belief is that if you're seeing somebody telling you to do something, it's not an angel. It could be a demon sent from the devil.
I mean, yes, it could be, but it could also be an angel. You never know.
Yeah.
Man, all this talk of religious themes. I feel like I'm going to put religious themes in my book now because I really enjoy religious themes. I could talk all day about my personal religious beliefs and everything.
Yeah.
And I have gone to church maybe 3 times in my life.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Have any of you been to a Universalist church?
No.
I have. I've been to one.
I bet that's fun.
It was interesting. It actually was kind of nice because they kind of take all religions and pile them together.
Hmm.
Yeah. It was kind of nice.
Which,
I went
of
to it one
course-
time when I was like 15.
Which, of course, the Bible is like there's only
There's
the
only
one true religion.
Yeah, which again, I think a man wrote that. And I don't think that's true at all. He was just like, if you don't believe this, you're going to die.
I have been to a Catholic church.
I've never been to
once,
one.
and I only got to go because my friend in elementary school was Catholic,
Mm.
and I spent the night at her house. And so they go to church every Sunday.
How'd your mom feel about that?
Oh, she wasn't happy.
I believe it.
Because their pastor, or their, what are they?
Priest?
The priest was a woman.
Oh. A Catholic priest? A woman?
Yes.
Oh, your mother must have been pissed. A woman?
Yeah, because I remember telling her, I said, it was, refreshing. What, I don't know what I said. I said that when I was in elementary. It was refreshing, mother. Like, oh. I was like, so-and-so's priest was a woman. And Mom was like, that is not allowed. That is not in our religion. It has to be
That's
a man.
crazy. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's what the Bible says. I mean, like, positions like that are for the man.
Why?
And the women are just supposed to be submissive
Because
to
men are
the man.
supposed to be like leaders and teachers and everything.
The woman can be. Ugh, gosh, man, us talking about Christianity is making me dislike it more. But, at the same time, I also have positive feelings for it.
Which, I mean...
And people would argue and disagree with me that I can't pick and choose, but I think it's
Like,
all
I
about
grew up
personal interpretation.
in, like, Baptist Christianity.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, there are some, like, Baptists that take it to heart. Everything written in the book is how it is and how it should be. But then there are some Baptists that believe, there's nothing wrong with LGBTQ people. And, there are understanding Christians.
Yeah.
It's just, they're few and far between, I feel.
My grandfather on my mom's side
Yes.
was not very religious until my mom was in her teenage years. And then he started going. And then later in life, whenever I was a teenager, he actually became a pastor at a Baptist church for a couple of years. And then on my dad's side, my grandpa was a very wild man. I've only heard a couple stories, but he was not religious at all until he had a vision one night. He was floating in his bed, and a voice told him that if he did not change his life and go to church, he would go to hell for eternity. So he did, and he went to church ever since. So that's sort of where that comes in. We weren't very religious at a young age. It came in later in life, and that's whenever I went, maybe like less than 10 times in my entire life.
That's
So,
crazy. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
As someone who grew up with her ass in a pew every Sunday.
Yeah.
Every
From
single
birth.
Sunday.
From birth.
From birth. I was born on a Sunday. My dad said that he really wanted to take me to church that day.
Oh my god.
The day you were born?
I was born on a Sunday.
All them old ladies like trying to kiss on you.
My mom was like, hell no.
Hell no.
She did say hell no though.
Thank
She
goodness for your
said,
mom.
heck no.
Sorry to go off on this religious tangent, everybody. It just sort of happened naturally.
That's all right.
Getting litty.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so nobody has anything else to say. See y'all next week.
Read your chapters.
Bye. Das
Bye.
Vidania.
Das Vidania.